The divorce papers were sitting on the mahogany coffee table, like a coiled snake, ready to strike. I stared at Xavier, the man I had shared my bed, my dreams, and my business with for 5 years. He didn't look like the doting husband, who had rubbed my feet every night for the last 7 months of my pregnancy. He looked like a stranger, cold, calculated, and terrifyingly calm. Beside him sat his lawyer, a man whose smile was as sharp as a razor blade. "I've made it very simple for you, Arya," Xavier said, leaning back and crossing his legs. He didn't even look at my swollen belly, the place where our son was kicking, unaware that his father was currently trying to dismantle our lives. 50% of Arya Beauty, 50% of the penthouse, and a monthly alimony that reflects the lifestyle I helped you build. Sign it, and we can keep this civil. Refuse, and I'll make sure the headlines about your emotional instability during this pregnancy ruin your brand before the baby even arrives. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I didn't let my hands shake. I looked at the man I had once called my soulmate and felt a sudden, sharp clarity. "You really think you're entitled to half of the company I built with my own inheritance and 3 years of sleepless nights before I even met you?" Xavier laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the room. "I'm the face of the expansion, Arya. I'm the one who closed the European deals while you were too morning sick to leave the house. We are a partnership. Legally, I am the co-architect of your success. And in this state, half of that success belongs to me." He had no idea. He thought he had trapped a vulnerable, pregnant woman in a corner. He thought he was the hunter. He had no clue that months ago, when the first whispers of his betrayal reached my ears, I had already laid the trap that would bury his ambitions forever. But to understand how we got to this cold standoff, you have to understand the fairy tale we lived in first. When I met Xavier, I was a 25-year-old entrepreneur with a small organic skincare line and a large vision. I had used every cent of the savings my grandmother left me to start Arya Beauty. I was working 18-hour days in a cramped studio. Xavier came into my life like a whirlwind of support. He was charming, business savvy, and seemed genuinely in awe of my drive. "You're going to change the industry, Arya," he told me on our third date, tucked away in a dimly lit bistro. "And I want to be the man who makes sure the world sees what I see." He didn't ask for a job. He didn't ask for money. He just showed up. He helped me organize my logistics. He used his background in marketing to polish my branding. He made himself indispensable. Within 2 years, we were married, and Arya Beauty had grown from a local secret to a national sensation. Our wedding was featured in magazines, the power couple of the beauty world. When I found out I was pregnant 6 months ago, I thought my life was a masterpiece. Xavier cried when he saw the ultrasound. He bought every parenting book on the market. He promised me that I could focus on the baby while he managed the heavy lifting at the office. "Rest, my queen," he whispered, kissing my forehead every morning. "I've got the company. I've got us." The first red flag wasn't a lipstick stain or a late-night phone call. It was a file. 4 months ago, I was looking for a digital copy of our lease agreement on Xavier's laptop when I saw a folder titled Exit Strategy. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it, expecting to see a business plan for a new branch. Instead, I saw spreadsheets, not company spreadsheets, but personal ones. It was a breakdown of my personal net worth, the valuation of Arya Beauty, and a timeline for a divorce filing. According to his notes, he was waiting for the company to hit a specific valuation, which happened last month, before making his move. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to throw his laptop through the window, to demand an explanation. But then I saw the name on the email correspondence in that folder, Blair. Blair was our head of distribution. She was someone I had hired, someone I trusted. The emails between them weren't just professional, they were disgusting. They were planning a life together, using the money they intended to strip from my company. Xavier was telling her how suffocating it was to pretend to be excited about the baby. He called me a vessel for his retirement fund. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the shower so he wouldn't hear me sobbing. I looked at my reflection, the tired eyes of a woman who was carrying a child and a crumbling marriage, and I made a choice. If Xavier wanted a war, he was going to get one, but he wouldn't even know it had started until he had already lost. The next day, I called Marcus, my oldest friend and a top-tier corporate lawyer. We met in a park, far from anyone who could recognize us. I showed him the screenshots I had taken. He's going for a quote, community property claim, Arya, Marcus warned me. Since he's been acting as a consultant and co-manager, he can argue that his labor significantly increased the company's value during the marriage. He could actually get 40 to 50%. Not if he signed a prenuptial agreement, I said firmly. But you didn't sign one when you got married, did you? Marcus asked. No, I replied, a cold smile touching my lips. But we are about to sign a business restructuring and liability waiver for the new European expansion. And tucked deep inside the technical jargon of the lender's protection clause will be a very specific, very ironclad post-nuptial agreement. For the next 2 months, I played the part of the blissful, oblivious wife. It was the hardest acting job of my life. I let Xavier take the lead on the expansion. I let him think I was becoming more dependent on him. When the time came to sign the massive stack of papers for the new investors, I brought them home. The lawyers said we both need to sign these, Xavier, I said, laying the papers out on the kitchen island while I made decaf tea. It's just standard procedure for the new venture capital firm. It separates our personal liabilities from the company's debts, so our baby's college fund is protected. He didn't even read the fine print. He was so arrogant, so convinced that I was a hormonal nesting housewife, that he barely skimmed the executive summaries. He signed his name with a flourish on every page I flagged, including the page that stated, "In the event of legal separation or divorce, the signatory waives all claims to the premarital assets of Arya Beauty, and any claim to appreciation of value is forfeited if the dissolution is precipitated by documented infidelity." I watched him sign his own professional death warrant while he smiled at me and patted my stomach. Fast forward to today. Xavier is sitting in my penthouse, thinking he's about to become a multi-millionaire at my expense. He thinks he's going to take half of my hard work and give it to Blair. Sign the papers, Arya, Xavier prompted, sliding a pen toward me. Don't make this harder for the baby. You're stressed, you're tired, just sign, and you can stay in the penthouse until the birth. I'm being more than generous. I picked up the pen, but I didn't sign his divorce decree. Instead, I pulled a folder from under the table. You're right, Xavier. We should be civil. So before I sign anything, I think you should read this. It's the business restructuring document you signed 2 months ago. Turn to page 42, paragraph 6. I watched his face as he took the document. At first, he looked annoyed. Then, as he read the words, his eyes began to widen. The blood drained from his face until his skin looked like gray parchment. His lawyer snatched the paper from him, scanning it quickly. The lawyer's expression shifted from confident to horrified in 3 seconds. What is this? Xavier hissed, his voice trembling. This isn't what I signed. You tricked me. I didn't trick you, Xavier. I gave you a 100-page document and told you it protected our future. And it does. It protects my future and my son's future from a man who thought he could use a pregnancy as a distraction to rob his wife. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a deadly quiet tone. I know about the exit strategy folder. I know about Blair. I know about the apartment you rented for her using company expenses. And thanks to this document, you are leaving this marriage with exactly what you brought into it. Nothing. You can't do this, he yelled, jumping to his feet. This won't hold up in court. You coerced me. Infidelity clauses are very standard in this state, Xavier, I said, standing up to meet his gaze. And since I have 3 months of your emails, hotel receipts, and GPS logs from the company car, the coercion argument is going to look very weak compared to your premeditated fraud. You didn't just cheat on me, you tried to embezzle from the company. That's a criminal matter, not just a civil one. Xavier looked at his lawyer, hoping for a lifeline. The lawyer just shook his head slowly. He signed it, Arya. It's notarized. If she has the proof of the affair, this clause is activated. You're looking at 0% of the company. The man who had spent months gaslighting me, telling me I was too emotional and hormonal, suddenly looked like a cornered animal. The mask of the golden boy had shattered, revealing the ugly, greedy soul beneath. He realized in that moment that he wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn in a game I had been playing for months. Get out, I said, pointing toward the door. Arya, please, he started, his voice suddenly shifting back to that manipulative, soft tone. I was confused. The pressure of the baby? I made a mistake. We can fix this. The only thing we're fixing is the locks, I replied. Your things are already in trash bags in the basement. Blair can pick them up, but if I were you, I'd check her phone first. I sent her the same evidence I gave the board of directors this morning. She was fired an hour ago for violating the company's ethics policy. I don't think she'll be very interested in a man with no job and a pending lawsuit. Xavier stood frozen, the magnitude of his loss finally sinking in. He had lost the company, the penthouse, his mistress, and his reputation in a single afternoon. He walked toward the door, his shoulders slumped, the weight of his own greed finally crushing him. As the door clicked shut behind him, I finally let out the breath I had been holding for months. I sank back into the chair and placed my hands on my stomach. It's okay, I whispered to the little life inside me. It's just us now. And we're gonna be just fine. But I knew this was only the beginning. Xavier was a man who didn't know how to lose gracefully. He still had his family's influence, and he still had the divorce court to face. He was going to try to play the victim. He was going to try to turn my own parents against me. Little did he know, I had one more card to play. A card that would ensure he could never show his face in this city again. The silence that followed the slamming of the penthouse door was the loudest thing I had ever heard. For a moment, I just stood there, my hand resting on the marble island, where Xavier had just signed away his future. I expected to feel a wave of grief, but all I felt was a profound sense of relief. The parasite was gone. But I knew Xavier. He was like a cornered rat. He wouldn't just scurry away, he would try to bite. Within 24 hours, the counterattack began. My phone started blowing up with notifications. Xavier hadn't gone to a hotel, he had gone to his parents. The golden boy was playing the victim card. He had posted a cryptic message on his social media about unforeseen betrayals and mental health struggles within the family, subtly hinting that my pregnancy had turned me into a paranoid, controlling monster who had forced him out of his own home. Then came the calls from his mother, Eleanor. She had always treated me like an outsider who got lucky by marrying her son. Arya, how could you? She shrieked into the phone the moment I picked up. Xavier is distraught. He told us everything. He said you've been having episodes, and that you forced him to sign legal documents while he was under duress. We are coming over there, and we are bringing our family lawyer. You cannot just discard a husband and a father-to-be because of a mood swing. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply said, Eleanor, I think it's best if we meet at my lawyer's office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Bring Xavier. Bring your lawyer. And please, bring a box of tissues. You're going to need them. I hung up before she could respond. I spent the rest of the night with Marcus, finalizing the digital presentation. We weren't just going to win a divorce. We were going to perform a public execution of Xavier's reputation. The next morning, the conference room at Marcus's firm felt like a battlefield. Xavier sat between his parents, looking pathetic in a slightly wrinkled suit, rubbing his eyes as if he had been crying for days. Eleanor glared at me, her pearls tight around her neck, while his father, a stern man who valued legacy above all else, sat with his arms crossed. Let's get to the point, Xavier's lawyer started, sliding a folder across the table. Our client was coerced into signing a post-nuptial agreement while he was focused on a high-stakes business expansion. Given Arya's current hormonal state and documented history of stress-related outbursts, we are moving to have that document nullified. We are also seeking a temporary injunction to freeze all company assets of Arya Beauty until a full audit can be conducted. Marcus didn't even look at the folder. He looked at Xavier. Xavier, are you sure you want to go down this road? This is your last chance to walk away with your dignity. Xavier sniffled, looking at his mother for strength. She trapped me, Marcus. I loved her, I supported her business, and she repaid me by trying to cut me out of my own son's life. I just want what's fair, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Okay, let's talk about fair. I nodded to Marcus, who dimmed the lights and turned on the large monitor at the end of the table. Xavier's claim is that I am unstable, and that he was a devoted husband. So let's look at the evidence of that devotion. The first slide appeared. It wasn't a business document. It was a high-resolution photo of Xavier and Blair at a jewelry store 3 weeks ago. He was sliding a diamond bracelet onto her wrist. The same afternoon, he told me he was at a late-night manufacturing meeting. Eleanor gasped. Xavier's father shifted uncomfortably. That was a gift for a client. Xavier stammered, his voice jumping an octave. A client you called my real queen in the card? Marcus asked, clicking to the next slide. It was a screenshot of a text thread between Xavier and Blair. Xavier. She's getting bigger every day. It's honestly repulsive to look at her. I just need to play the part for 3 more months. Once the European deal is signed, I'm filing. We'll take her for 50%, and then we can finally start our life in Paris. Hang in there, babe. Blair. I hate that you have to touch her. Just make sure the lawyers tighten the community property claim. I want every cent of that bitch's hard work. The silence in the room was suffocating. I watched Xavier's father. His face was turning a deep, dangerous shade of red. He was a man who built a family empire on the idea of honor, and his son had just been exposed as a common thief and a gutter-level cheater. There's more, I said, my voice cold and clear. Xavier didn't just cheat. He embezzled. Marcus, show the expense reports. The screen filled with data. We showed how Xavier had used company funds, money intended for the expansion, to pay the security deposit on a luxury apartment for Blair. We showed the ghost consultant fees he had been paying to a shell company Blair owned. He hadn't just been planning a divorce, he had been systematically draining Aria Beauty from the inside out. Xavier, his father whispered, his voice vibrating with rage. Is this true, Dad? It's not what it looks like. I was going to pay it back? I was frustrated. His father stood up, the chair screeching against the floor. He didn't look at the lawyers. He looked at his son with a look of pure disgust. You didn't just betray your wife, you idiot. You betrayed the child she's carrying. You stole from the hand that fed you. You used our family name to cover for your cowardice. He turned to me, his expression softening for a fraction of a second. Aria, I am deeply ashamed. My son is a failure of a man. Eleanor, we're leaving. But Arthur, Eleanor cried, looking between her son and her husband. The lawyers, the company. There is no company for him, Arthur roared. He signed the agreement. He committed fraud. If he tries to fight this in court, I will personally fund Aria's legal team to ensure he ends up in a prison cell for embezzlement. You're on your own, Xavier. Don't come back to the house. They walked out, leaving Xavier sitting there with his head in his hands. His own lawyer closed his briefcase, looked at Xavier with a mixture of pity and annoyance, and walked out without saying a word. Xavier looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. Aria, please. I have nothing now. My parents cut me off. I have no job. I have no place to go. You can't do this to me. Think of the baby. I am thinking of the baby, I said, standing up. That's why I'm making sure he never grows up seeing a man like you as a role model. You aren't a father, Xavier. You were just a long, expensive mistake I made while I was building my empire. Marcus will send you the final divorce decree. If you ever come within a mile of me or my company again, I will release the full exit strategy folder to the press. You'll be lucky if you can get a job flipping burgers after that. I walked out of that office, and for the first time in months, my back didn't ache. The weight was gone. The next few months were a blur of intense productivity. I didn't let the scandal slow me down. I used it. I rebranded Aria Beauty as a brand built on authenticity and resilience. I came out publicly with my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor of corporate and personal gaslighting. The response was global. Women from all over the world started sharing their stories of being undermined by the men in their lives. Our sales didn't just grow. They exploded. By the time I was 8 months pregnant, Aria Beauty was valued at 10 times what it had been when Xavier was managing it. I opened our flagship store in London, then Paris, then Tokyo. I didn't need a golden boy marketing face. My own face, tired, pregnant, but fierce, became the symbol of the brand. 2 weeks before my due date, I was sitting in my new sun-drenched office when Marcus called. It's done, Aria. The judge signed the final decree. Because of the infidelity clause and the evidence of financial misconduct, Xavier's claim was dismissed with prejudice. He's been ordered to pay back the embezzled funds, though we both know he doesn't have a cent. He's currently living in a studio apartment above a garage, working a low-level sales job. Blair left him the moment she realized there was no payout. I looked out at the city skyline. And the baby? He signed away his parental rights in exchange for me not pressing criminal charges for the embezzlement, Marcus said. He's gone, Arya. For good. I hung up the phone and looked down at my stomach. We did it, I whispered. The birth of my son Leo was the most beautiful moment of my life. When I held him for the first time, I didn't feel the absence of a father. I felt the presence of a mother who had fought a war to make sure his world was safe. I didn't need a partner to complete the picture. I was the picture. A year later, I was invited to speak at a global entrepreneurship summit. I stood on that stage, looking out at thousands of women. I wasn't the shy girl who started a skincare line in a studio anymore. I was the CEO of a billion-dollar empire. People will tell you that you need a man to manage the heavy lifting of your dreams, I told the crowd, my voice echoing through the hall. They will tell you that your pregnancy, your emotions, or your softness makes you weak. They will try to convince you that your success is a team effort, even when they are the ones dragging you down. But listen to me. Your intuition is your greatest business asset. Your resilience is your greatest weapon. And a prenup? That's not a lack of trust. It's a boundary that protects your soul. I walked off that stage to a standing ovation. As I headed to the green room, I saw a familiar face in the hallway. It was Xavier. He looked older, tired, his suit cheap and ill-fitting. He was working as a member of the event's setup crew, moving chairs. He froze when he saw me. He looked at my designer suit, my confident stride, and the security detail that followed me. He looked like he wanted to say something, to apologize, to beg, to explain. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I walked right past him, as if he were a ghost. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel revenge. I felt nothing. And that was the ultimate victory. He was no longer a villain in my story. He wasn't even a character anymore. He was just a stranger moving chairs in a room I had built. I reached the parking lot where my car was waiting. My son was in his car seat, laughing at a toy. I climbed in, closed the door, and told the driver, "Home, please." My life wasn't a fairy tale anymore. It was something much better. It was real. It was mine. And it was just beginning. The prenup I never told him about didn't just save my company. It saved my life. It taught me that the only person you can truly count on to protect your future is the woman you see in the mirror every single morning. So I have a question for you. Are you protecting your future, or are you letting someone else hold the pen to your story? Have you ever ignored a red flag because you wanted to believe in the fairy tale? What would you do if you realized the person holding your hand was actually reaching for your pocket? Let's talk about it, because your story deserves an ending that you write.